the ancient land of Midian. Flavius Josephus, Demetrius, and Philo all said that it is in the ancient land of Midian, and those ancient historians said that it's the highest mountain in the region of Madian. So if they went around by the desert road through the Red Sea, they would have come and gone to this mountain that's in Saudi Arabia. Am I sure about this? This is a pretty strong guess. When we talk about degrees of probability, this is probably the area that we're looking at for the real Mount Sinai. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But it does have a lot of merit because it has the biblical description. We have the ancient historians, and it also has some unique geological formations around it. For instance, as we go to this mountain, we see that it's the highest mountain in the region. There is a fence that's going around it today. I think that the Saudi government knows exactly what they have there. They put a fence around the mountain. You can see the barbed wire fence and the little shack there that is where they, little air-conditioned shack there is where they have the guards that are still guarding it today after all these years, since 1988. The top of the mountain is charred black. Fascinating because God said he descended on the mountain like flames of a furnace. So I have shown this to geologists. They say, Bob, don't get excited, a little impetuous about you thinking that this could be where God descended on the mountain in flames of a furnace, because all the maps say that this is a volcanic mountain. I said, well, look at this rock. I broke this rock open, and there are jaws at the ground. This is granite on the inside, and it's melted black on the outside. Took this to the American Museum of Natural History, and they said it's metamorphic, changed by heat and or pressure close to the surface. Now look at this mountain. You see the black on the right-hand side. This is not desert varnish. Then it stops and automatically becomes tan. So we have a very black rocks on the right side, and then it goes to tan. Is this where God's literally presence came down and seared these rocks? Because it goes right from black to tan. There's no transition. It's just amazing. For you geologists out there, you might want to talk to me afterwards. I have some samples we can look at. Now, here's this, there's an altar at the foot of the mountain. It's about 30 feet high and 30 feet across. You can see that there's a fence going around this. They know what they have here. Why would they put a fence around an old pile of rocks in the middle of nowhere? I think because they know what they have. Because if you look really close here, you can see on the side of this the ancient bull god Apis and Hathor. Of course, they worshiped this god, and they made a golden calf. And you can see that it matches perfectly with the Egyptian artwork. So these petroglyphs here, very ancient, are matching with what the Bible says. The Bible says, when on Mount Sinai, Elijah pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Now, there's nothing exciting about a cave, but there's no cave at the traditional Mount Sinai. We have to realize that at that mountain, there's only 1 square yard per person where they could have camped. Archaeologists have dug that mountain up. The Israeli archaeologists had that for 16 years, didn't find one clay pot, not one bone, nothing to connect. Here we have all this evidence around this mountain. Here is this cave. This is where Elijah would have stood if this is the real Mount Sinai. Now, you can see there's plenty of space for them to have camped out there. The Bible says Moses built an altar at the foot of the mountain. Now, this is an ancient, this Hebrew word is like when you push up against a screen, you get as close as you can. And so the camera is going to the right, and as we go right up against the mountain, I mean, just within a foot, there is this altar that's 120 feet long. It has a center rock ridge in there. What does this rock ridge represent? Well, first of all, there's no civilization ever lived anywhere close to this because of no water source. This could be where they had the animals, where they ran the animals through this chute, and you can see this center rock ridge here. The animals would have been placed in there, slaughtered, and then we have an altar right next to it that's full of compressed ash. What is this? Why is this important? Because the ancients, over in the Muslims never did any kind of burnt offerings, nor do they do it in modern times. But the ancient Hebrews did. They had a burnt offering ceremony where they would make a big fire, and they would slaughter and burn the animals upon the fire. The Bible says, and they set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Do we find pillars at this site? Keep in mind, there's no civilization ever has lived even close to this, and we have these white stone pillars. Now, you're not going to see the pillars right now. You see those white things out on the ground? Those are actually sections of pillars. How did they make pillars in those days? They would take pillars and they would take pieces of stone. They would cut them and place them on top of each other. This is Egyptian motif. Doesn't have the flukes that the Greeks have or the knobs that the Romans would have. It's flat, rounded, and topped, very similar to what the Egyptians. So they were Egyptian artisans for all intents and purposes because they were in the house of Pharaoh working as slaves. You can see these white stone pillars, surface located. Very interesting why they're surface located. Now, this is a couple named Jim and Penny Caldwell. They were over doing a remarkable work over into Saudi Arabia. They were working for Aramco. They heard about, so they did their own research, and they heard a little bit about what we're doing, and others that were doing research over there. And they went on their own and found what I think is the split rock at Horeb. While they were over there, they had, here's Jim explaining. We have the sound down so I can narrate over this. We have to go really fast on this. But Jim is explaining here that he drove up, he saw this huge rock sticking up. Now look at this rock. You got to understand, this thing is just sticking up. It's 4 stories high. It's not just a little knob. It's a 4-story high rock, and the Bible calls it the rock at Horeb. In other words, you could see it for miles and miles around. Look at this thing sticking straight up, and it's split right down the middle. Moses, the people cried out for water. Moses hit the rock, and the rock split. You can see the lower left-hand corner where the hydraulics have blown away some of the rock. You can see where it's fractured right down the middle. There's going to be another shot of it here in a minute. We'll just show that. When Moses was, the people were crying out for water, and so the people said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and our livestock die of thirst?" They were pretty ticked off that he brought them there. And so it's so dry in Saudi Arabia. It was 128 degrees the day that we're there. You think it's hot outside? This was pretty hot here. And so the people would have cried out for water. Moses hit the rock. Now look at this split right down the middle. This is amazing because you can see the lower left-hand corner of this. You see that big chunk that's blown away? Water has done that. There's only 2 ways to make erosion like this, wind and or water. This was by hydraulic source. Now the camera is going up. You can see that it fractures from the bottom going up. This is not a pattern that is typical of erosion. Usually from the top down, but you can see where the water has, at one time water has come out of this. It actually, you can see the carving, those black little holes at the bottom are like nozzles where the water had come out, shot out. You can see the eddy to the left. You see it's smooth there where the water has swirled around. Then there was little dry waterfalls that came off this. So if this is the real Mount Sinai, then this is the rock that Moses struck. It split apart and the water came out. And the Bible says the water gushed out. Didn't just trickle out. It was a burst of water that flowed down the mountain. Now look at this mountainside. It's all washed smooth. You see this? There's no water in Saudi Arabia. You get a half an inch of rain every 10 years, and the whole mountainside is washed away. Look at these dry waterfalls here where the water would have come out and gone down the mountain. And that down below, you see that lake bed out there? That should be sand. That sand has all been washed away. There's no sand there. It's just because the hydraulic sources have washed away all the sand. You go to Saudi Arabia, it's all pretty much sand. So that is the search for Mount Sinai. Sorry it's so brief, but to get all them in, we need to do this. Now this is, we're going to start looking for the Ark of the Covenant. The mystery of the Ark of the Covenant has been, I took Chuck with me on this one. This has some real prophetic undertones. I have a book out there. We're almost sold out right now, but if you need a book, we'll provide one for you. We'll get one mailed to you. But we don't have time to, but prophecy, I think, comes alive with the ark being in Ethiopia. Isaiah 18 says a great gift will come from Ethiopia. Zephaniah 3:10 says, from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliants, the daughters of my dispersed, shall bring my offering. This is a messianic prophecy. The Ethiopians claim that for 800 years, the ark actually sat on an island and was protected. It came here after the time of Manasseh when he did the atrocities in the temple, and it was brought here. Mind you, this is a minority viewpoint. This is a rock that they claim that had blood in it, that they did blood sacrifices. This is a bowl called a gomer that they would put blood in and stir the blood so it wouldn't get coagulated in there, and then would use it for their blood sacrificial ceremonies. They brought out meat forks. Now, this is on an island in the middle of nowhere. It took us about 3 hours on a boat ride to get out there, and we even found the little frame to an ephod that we have seen recently they brought out. In fact, I was in there just in January. They were showing us all much more than this. They probably have 50 objects in a place there. This is a stand that they have here that's bent over just with sheer fatigue of age. So we know that this is extreme.